So I think a lot about the contrast between banality and wonder, between disengagement and radiant ecstasy, between being unaffected by the here and now and being absolutely ravished emotionally by it. And I think one of the problems for human beings is mental habits. Once we create a comfort zone, we rarely step outside of that comfort zone. But the consequence of that is a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation. Overstimulation to the same kind of thing, the same stimuli again and again and again, renders said stimuli invisible. Your brain has already mapped it in its own head, and you no longer literally have to be engaged by that. We have eyes yet see not, ears that hear not, and hearts that neither feel nor understand. There's a great book called The Wondering Brain that says that one of the ways that we elicit wonder is by scrambling the self temporarily so that the world can seep in. You know, Henry Miller says even a blade of grass, when given proper attention, becomes an infinitely magnificent world in itself, you know. Darwin said attention, if sudden and close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement. That's what rapture is. That's what illumination is. That's what that sort of infinite comprehending awe that human beings love so much. And so how do we do that? How do we mess with our perceptual apparatus in order to have the kind of emotional and aesthetic experience from life that we render most meaningful? Because we all know those moments are there. Those are the moments that would make Final Cut. Only in these moments we experience afresh the hardly bearable ecstasy of direct energy exploding on our nerve endings. This is the rhapsodic, ecstatic bursting forth of awe that expands our perceptual parameters beyond all previous limits, and we literally have to reconfigure our mental models of the world in order to assimilate the beauty of that download. That is what it means to be inspired. The Greek root of the term means to breathe in, to take it in. We fit the universe through our brains and it comes out in the form of nothing less than poetry. We have a responsibility to awe. Cool. Hi, everybody. All right.
Whoa.
Whoa, dude.
From poetry of Robert Hass to you, Jason Silva. So for those of you who don't know out there, Jason is, there are discoverers and pioneers of awe. And if you study people's lives, you'll quickly discover that to be the case. Emily Dickinson, Charles Darwin, most undoubtedly was one. John Muir, Stacey Bear, whom we heard from earlier today, and you. So Jason was the Emmy-nominated creator of Brain Games, the best viewed program on National Geographic, and absolutely, I started having young scientists talk to me about this program as just a mind-opening adventure into the human brain. Now travels widely, does TED Talks, speaks to millions. His videos, Shots of Awe, which we'll capture a little bit today, have been viewed by tens of millions, and he is an awe pioneer. How'd you make that video? What got you there?
Honestly, I've always been haunted by the fact that these inspired moments of rhapsody are so fleeting. Even though the research tells us that these moments of awe leave us with residual and lasting cognitive benefits, increased well-being, increased compassion, increased creativity, nonetheless, the moments themselves are still very finite. And so that has always caused me great distress. Like even as a little kid, I'd go to the toy store, and before I even could run in, I turned over to my mom, and I was like, "Can I stay here infinite time?" You know, because I was always cognizant of the passing of time. So really the desire to immortalize Rhapsody, to clothe the numinous, you know, Otto Rank's Mysterium Tremendum Fascinosum, was because I'm interested in repeatability. I'm interested, it's not enough to touch, to touch the infinite, to mainline space and time through the optic nerve. When you look at the deep field photographs of the Hubble Space Telescope, it's not enough to pass through that moment. For me, it's like I want to archive it, I want to put it in a drawer, and I want to be able to experience it again and again and again forever. So it's been this battle against entropy and against the finite that has inspired this. It's always been my interest to immortalize and eternalize awe. And that was always my interest in media and in creating these videos. And when I first started doing them, I kind of realized that if I was sufficiently able to get out of my head to go into a flow state, because there's no script, there's no real outline. There might be like a quote that I really like that spins me off, or like a passage from a book.
What's an example? Give me a quote that.
Well, in this one, I knew I wanted to say that line, "We have a responsibility to awe," which is from a poem by Rebecca Elson. And I just thought, okay, we have a responsibility to awe, that's really cool. And then I had read about the studies that were saying that these experiences of inspiration and awe were cognitively beneficial. And rather than thinking of myself as a hedonist who was seeking these experiences of cognitive bliss, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, actually, this is medicinal. So, right away. Yeah, like I was like, oh, this is therapy, this is medicine, this is good for my soul. And I remember once I reached out to this psychedelic writer and philosopher called Diana Slattery. I don't know if you've read her work. She's totally out there and brilliant. Yeah. And when I had a conversation with her, I was like, when I read your stuff, my brain explodes. Like, I literally have braingasms every time I read how deeply your mind goes into some of these ideas. I just want to drink it up. I don't want to stop. It's like Carl Sagan used to say, understanding is a kind of ecstasy. Like, that moment of, like, signification, when it's spinning in your head. You feel like what's happening means something. That meaningfulness, that signification is addicting. And I was like, what is my problem? And she said, you are a cognitive ecstasy addict. That's what she told me. So what is cognitive ecstasy? Well, it's when you have an epiphany, a mindgasm, an exhilarating neurostorm of intense intellectual pleasure. So it's masturbation for the thinking mind, and it's what it is. And that's...
No wonder you're doing so well.
No, but I tell people that it really comes from a place that I needed, like, an antidote to the poison of existential dread. Yeah. Like, I'm not religious. Okay? I grew up in a secular Jewish household. My mother is an artist and a poet. But I bear the haunting, neurotic fear of the mortal coil. Ever since I read Ernest Becker's book, The Denial of Death, that kind of distilled the human condition and the neurotic, incessant anxiety that afflicts the human race, to the fact that we have this unbearable awareness of our mortality. So unlike other animals who live blissfully in the present, the elusive present, we, with our brilliant neocortex that had allowed us to design and plan and execute and build the modern world and protect ourselves and overcome obstacles. I mean, this is a brilliant thing, our neocortex. But it comes with a curse. The curse of foreseeing the bitter end. And so for somebody who loves to learn and love, and aesthetic pleasure in particular is something that I can never get enough of, there is this end, right? There is this finality. We've committed no crime, yet we are afflicted with a death sentence. And so it just became this thing of like, well, fuck. Like, Ernest Becker says, there's 3 ways human beings have dealt with this. The number one is the religious solution, which takes care of the death anxiety by telling us, don't worry, you'll go to heaven and then you live forever. Number 2, the romantic solution, which I can relate to. You turn your lovers into gods and goddesses, right? That makes so much sense. She is like the wind. She is my salvation. Staring into the iris of your lover's eye, set that to a beautiful song, golden hour veneer, maybe a little bit of pot. You're there. Like, you're there. But the moment still passes. No relationship can bear the burden of godhood. Your lovers will reveal their clay feet. And so then finally, Ernest Becker says, the creative solution to the problem of death: go build something that makes the world better. Go solve a problem. Go serve mankind. Go build some magical structure. Create a jet engine. Make a space shuttle. And that is how you transcend death, We all still die, but at least we leave something behind. But anyway...
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I vaguely remember that was an answer to why you made that film, and that's a pretty... But I think I really liked what you said, and it builds upon what we heard in the last session, which is that, and it's something that we often lose sight of, which is that awe comes out of anxiety and a lot of horror, and I think that evolutionarily it probably is this transformation of basic forms of fear and fear of terror and gore and the like. And I think you're recapitulating what we heard earlier. You've called yourself an awe junkie and a wonder junkie, and you travel around the world doing this work in some way. How early did that begin? I mean, when did you start to, as a child?
So I've been making videos since I was 12. I mean, the thing is, I wanted to be a director originally, and most of the videos I made were spoofs. So I'd cast like my cousin and my brother. Like my cousin's right there, the audience. He can testify. He used to get dressed like Batman in some of our we used to make like really funny movies. But really, it was in high school. I started to organize these little salons in my house in Venezuela. I went to an international school, so my friends were from all over the world. So we had the United Colors of Benetton, all cultures. And I would just handpick the kind of thoughtful introverts that I kind of knew I would get along with. And then we would kind of get together in my terrace in my house and smoke marijuana. And what that did is by creating a really safe place to get out of our heads, right, to enter the flow state, which is characterized by timelessness and selflessness, the doer and the seer merge, we just started to experience what it was like to be really present. Like so present that I was no longer worried about whether I was having a good time or not, which is how I am most of the time. I was not anxious or sad about the past. I was not nervous or even thinking about tomorrow. I was here, and I was laughing, and I was giggling, and I was philosophizing, and I was getting really inspired, rhapsodic soliloquies coming out of my mouth, and I was like, film this, film this, film this. And that's really where it became, because it was like I was able, number one, to reliably and predictably get in the zone, get into this inspired place, and then I could pre-configure a playlist of media to sit through and watch when I was in that place. Because normally I don't have the capacity to be present enough to be moved by media. Even if you put it in front of me, I'm not all there. But in these instances, I was. So then every trailer, every scene from every movie that ever touched me, I had them all archived, all in sequence, and I would get my friends really out of their heads, and then I'd play them this, watch this, watch this, watch this, just to curate these awe experiences, just to get in there and basically decenter us. It was like therapy. It was like bliss and awe therapy, kind of like going through a car wash of awe, you know? And then when you pop out on the other side, you feel purged. It's like really good sex. You're just like satiated, finally, you know? As Roland Barthes says, all of my desires abolished by the plenitude of their satisfaction. You know, for a second, I had attained that grace, and I was just no longer afraid and no longer upset about future outcomes, because the now felt experientially for that moment timeless. And that was the addiction. And I wanted to understand it, and I wanted to deconstruct it, because again, no matter how blissful I was aware that the moment would pass. And tomorrow's another day. And I go back to fetching water and chopping wood, and how the hell do I get back to that, you know? In fact, Jamie Wheel from the Flow Genome Project says that we're all bliss junkies. We get hooked on the state instead of raising the stage. And that our self systems are like colanders full of holes. So we get all this awe, lasts for a little while, but then we're bleeding from the bottom. But if we could actually transform our self systems into chalices, we might actually render ourselves holy. And how we do that is perhaps through a cocktail of biotechnological intervention, drugs, meditation, embodied activities, the Flow Dojo that these guys have created. I don't care what it takes.
How about
but
technology?
It's paradise engineering. Technology, too.
Like, what would you recommend?
Well, the IMAX. There's this great book that talks about how IMAX theaters are the modern cathedrals. It's called Hairs Down Your Spine or something down your spine. But if you think about like watching an IMAX film of like the Hubble Space Telescope, like that is transformative. It's bigger than you. You kind of disappear into the experience. You lose all kind of self-awareness, and you kind of enter that dream, you know? And so I think technological mediation, external mediation is huge. But I think, you know, whether it's nature, that also works 100%. But for those people who can't necessarily get to nature, I think virtual reality, I think things like IMAX can help get us there. I think for me, what I like about making media for that is that I can carry it around in my pocket. You know, like I always have this. I can always sit in the dark and play one of these videos, and then it's just like, it feels so good.
Shall we see another video?
Yeah, so okay, I want to show you guys some stuff. This video is about the cosmic awe of space exploration. I remember reading this book called Rocket Men, and it was about really why, when you like really stare at the stars and you're kind of like just marveling, and you can't, people say it's ineffable what you feel like when you're staring and actually contemplating the infinite. So my friend Ross Anderson, who wrote an article for the New York Review of Books, wrote the best piece ever about the Hubble and the new James Webb Telescope. And he says that staring at the deep field photographs was akin to an ontological awakening, a forceful reckoning with what is. Staring at that photograph effectively mainlined space and time through the optic nerve, and that the sheer aesthetic force of these images, of these discoveries, distilled the complex abstractions of astrophysics into singular expressions of color and light that vindicated Keats' famous couplet, "Beauty is truth, truth is beauty." So I was like, holy shit, that's it. I'm kind of obsessed with finding a way to clothe things in words or in art, because ineffability, as beautiful of a word as it is a cop-out. Oh, you can't explain it. And I agree that certain things have to be experienced, but I still love explaining because it makes me feel like I've effectively integrated the experience.
Well put.
So let's show the space video and see if it conveys the awe of space contemplation and exploration. Please. You know, with the advent of the commercial space revolution, with the fact that human beings are finally going to domesticate space travel, it's worth celebrating for once why we want to explore the heavens to begin with. And Marina Benjamin perhaps has the best line. She says, when we dream of space, we dream of transcendence. We dream of what we might become. The exploratory journey, that desire to break through boundaries, to probe the perimeters of possibility, to explore the adjacent possible, that is what it means to be human. We didn't stay in the caves, says Kurzweil. We didn't stay on the planet. With biotechnology, we won't stay with the limitations of biology. In fact, today, by leveraging exponentially emerging technologies, we're going to have computers trillions of times more powerful, navigating spaceships that are millions of times cheaper, taking us to space. Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic is going to take artists into space. What's going to happen when poets and artists look down upon the earth? What new reflections that will uplift the human spirit, that will thrust human consciousness towards the numinous might transpire when we keep pushing beyond all limits, when we get to Kubrick's Beyond the Infinite, the place where dreams are born through the wormhole, down the rabbit hole. It's glorious. It's what Neil deGrasse Tyson says. Doing what's never been done before is intellectually seductive, whether or not we deem it practical. It's what we do. It's what makes us cosmic heroes, cosmic revolutionaries, not stooges conscripted to advance a natural order that kills everyone. So let us go forth.
So again,
it was like, how do you somehow capture that feeling,
Yeah,
you know?
you did
and
it.
so that's, well, I hope so.
Yeah.
But I resonate a lot with Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan, I feel like, was drunk on awe. Or rather, should I say high, because he used to love smoking pot, apparently. But Carl Sagan, to me, was the most philosophical astronomer, TV personality, media guy I've ever seen. I mean, he was an astronomer, but he was like a total awe poet, in my opinion. Like, you watch The Pale Blue Dot, and it's just like, I wanted to convey some of that intensity, and I have found that media is the only way that I can do it, you know, because I went to film school. Like, I'm there with the editor. I'm picking the songs. Like, I know what is going to give me the chills, and hopefully, you know, I have a nose for it that hopefully will resonate with others as well in that sense, you know.
So I'm going to ask you a question, an amazing film. You know, one of the things that science has yet to really figure out, and it's kind of an old question in thinking about awe, is the distinction between awe and the sublime and beautiful. And when I watched your film, it almost alternated between awe and the sublime and then beautiful atmospheric shots and the like. So how do you grapple with these two perceptions?
So a lot of people, there's that idea that awe is a sort of terror and being overwhelmed by something larger than yourself. And certainly sometimes, like, staring at the stars at night can start with like wonderful awe and then switch into terrifying awe and then back to wonderful awe. I think that honestly the one I'm most interested in is mystery awe, followed by cognitive ecstasy awe. So that's the one from like aesthetic contemplation and like looking at the universe, but then like setting it to like an amazing music. Like I like to, the knobs and levers of perception. Like, you know, people say, well, filmmakers, they manipulate you in the editing room by making you feel a certain way. I'm like, well, yeah, I do it to myself. You know, like I've always done that. Like I look at old footage and I'm like, if I put this like Rachmaninoff song in the background, it'll make me cry. Okay, perfect, let's do that. You know, I want to be able to DJ my emotional experience, and I want to basically. Eric Davis, Eric with a K, who wrote a wonderful book called Technosis, Myth, Magic, and Mysticism in the Age of Information. It's a marvelous article about experience design and how he says, like, increasingly technologies are becoming technologies of experience. Everything's about experience. We don't buy things, we buy experiences. And basically what he says is that what we're dealing with now is the technical material of subjectivity itself. We're playing the piano with our subjective experience. And so that's amazing for a control freak, because it's like I'm imagining new, sublime, patterned experiences that are more beautiful than the most beautiful Rachmaninoff melody you've ever heard. Like more beautiful than the most beautiful thing you've ever listened to in your life. Like that's what we're going to be able to engineer. And that excites me because it's, again, the bliss junkie wants to bliss himself out, you know? And if we have to, you know, if we don't solve death with the whole singularity thing, then we might as well go blissed out.
So tell us about Shots of Awe, and what do you want to build out of Shots of Awe?
So making those videos has been like the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. Actually, my partner on Shots of Awe, Tom Lofthouse, is right there, and we couldn't have scaled it the way we had if it weren't for this man right here, who brought all the resources from Discovery Digital Networks and you know, gave me access to kind of a full-time editor to work with, and, you know, enough of a budget for us to get like the imagery required. Because before that, I started doing these videos out of pocket. I left my old job working for Al Gore's Current TV, and I was self-funding these videos, and I was releasing like one every couple of weeks or months, you know, and it cost me like $4,000 or $5,000 in stock footage. And I was doing it, I just put so much love into each one. And at first I was very intimidated at the thought of doing enough to release them weekly, because I don't know if I could put myself in the headspace that often, you know, but we decided to just like go off to like Big Sur or like Sea Ranch up in California, or like Amsterdam, my favorite place. And
we would have guessed that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
Well, yeah, I like the bicycle culture, honestly, is what I love the most. Everybody riding their bikes, egalitarianism, people working part-time by choice. People are just groovy there. Anyway, we found that actually getting sufficiently into the zone, and what I mean by that is just like creating an environment of just feeling free and feeling safe, the material just started to come out. I never thought we would bank 15 episodes worth in a day, and then we'd edit them and release them weekly. Nice. And it's just blown up. You know, I got to
meet Richard Branson and speak at his island. He tweeted the space video and wrote about it on Virgin. Become very good friends with Ron Howard, who's a huge Shots of Awe fan. He he doesn't believe I don't script them, which is we've talked about several times. Like, how do you do that without scripting? I'm like, I don't know, it's not me. But it's opened my world in this enormous way, and I've also done this TV show, Brain Games, which has been a blast, and I love that people love it. That's a bigger collaboration. That's a lot of cooks in that kitchen. But Shots of Awe is like my baby. Like I do it with like 2 of my close friends, and it's really my baby. I don't take money from it. I don't get paid for Shots of Awe. Like it's a complete labor of love. But it has opened my world. So I travel the world. I speak to people. What I would love is for it to continue to scale, because it makes me feel like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I do these because I get a lot of pleasure from making them. I get a lot of pleasure from the entire process. But the fact that people feel uplifted from the content, it's how they say, ask not what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. I get that double punch with this because I get a lot of pleasure from it, but then people also do. So then I feel like, okay, well, I'm making a contribution, even a small part in my own small way. So I would just like it to continue to scale. And people ask me like, what's next? What's next? I've never had a map. I've always had a compass. And so I kind of like go with what I feel, and hopefully it will continue to scale. Actually, there's another video I'd love to show you that was done by a friend of mine called Leonardo D'Alessandri. And we've actually collaborated on another Shot of Awe. But what I'm going to show you now is just strictly a video that he made that, I guess if you ask me what's next for me, it would be to combine Shots of Awe style narration with this level of editing. So if you think of awe as something that just encompasses the infinite, I think this filmmaker has done the most sublime, non-verbal piece of media to capture what I think is pure intravenous awe. So please lend your heart and mind to the Watchtower of Turkey.
Do you hear me? This is the voice of an embryo past. The sound of horses and the strong walk of men. Do you feel me? This is your cultural thrill. The smell of a powerful land. Can you see me?
So that guy, he's like in his late 20s. He lives in Italy, Leonardo D'Alessandri. Apple, the people behind Final Cut Pro, said that that was the best edited video the year that it came out. He edited every frame by frame. He shot the whole thing with his little Canon, and then he edited frame by frame. That's what he was able to get that intensity of that look. I mean, he's a savant. And so if you ask me, like, next step would be to be able to, like, work with an editor like that, and that have that kind of editing and just kind of take it to the next level. Because, I mean, obviously that's bizarrely brilliant.
Well, you've transported us in a timeless fashion, but regrettably there is time, and I wanted to thank you for your amazing work.
Thank you.
and your incredible
Wow.
work, Jason.
Thank you so much.
Jason Silva.
Thank you.